Straight Talk audience. This is AI Gonzalo Lira, and this is Straight Talk, Cyber Cafe Edition.
Let's get ready to rumble! Trumpomania 2025. Welcome to the Liberty Report with Adam Mad Maxwell, Professor Red Pill. And we're going to get into the fake wars, fake Trump administration, craziness that's going on, the chaos that's ensuing. So if you want to, go ahead and take off, Mr. Adam Maxwell.
Thank you. Well, in this episode of the Liberty Report on the 2nd of July 2025, we pull the curtains back, not on a new war, but on the performance of war. We understand, we recognize that politics isn't broken because it was never real to begin with. The leaders, the wars, the institutions, it's all kayfabe. When we say that this is fake and maybe even gay, we don't mean to say that the blood isn't real, that bombs don't fall, that people don't die. All of this does occur. But like a stage magician sawing the woman in half, what you see isn't really what's happening. The American empire, more than any other in history, has mastered not just war, but the illusion of meaning behind it, of propaganda and narratives. So I'm hoping that today we're going to be talking about why the Iran-Israeli conflict was real in firepower, but fake in purpose, and how strategically, tactically they manufacture these wars and conflicts and why. How the United States manages perception like a WWE wrestler, scriptwriter, and why Trump is king. Why Ukraine has become a casino for the global elites, and Israel perhaps a disposable pawn. I think our central thesis, certainly mine, is that it's not that the world is ungoverned and it's spontaneous chaos erupting. It's misnarrated. The most important weapon today isn't the drone or the dollar. It's the pen. It's the story. It's the propaganda.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it's all script writing at the end of the day. I mean, when you think about it, like, what was it? Oh man, Trump's like, oh, if you attack our bases, there's going to be excessive force. And what came after they attacked the bases? A ceasefire, right? Like, well, almost immediately after.
Yes, this is what's going on behind the scene. Conflict. This is what I said. It's not ungoverned. Conflicts are managed. Now, you want to manage escalation, you want to manage de-escalation, and that's what we saw, a managed de-escalation. The conditions were set in place that a ceasefire could occur. The United States did strike Iran. Before they did so, they signaled, they said, Iran, we're going to strike here and here, okay? And Iran said, okay. And then Iran said, America, we're going to strike here, okay? And America said, okay. American personnel and assets were moved out of the region. Likewise, in Iran, how many Iranians did America kill with their strikes? Do you know?
I don't have the foggiest like the data right
None.
now, but
none.
Oh, okay.
The Americans didn't kill a single Iranian, and Iran didn't kill or injure a single American. Now, Israel killed apparently 900-ish Iranians died, including civilians, but also military. And vice versa, over 100 Israelis probably died. I don't have the figures either. When we say that these are, when we say there's kayfabe and fakery here, it's not to say these people didn't die. It's not to say the missiles weren't sent over. It's not to say the planes didn't bomb these countries. It's to say that it's all a performance. And this is the word kayfabe. It's a great term from professional wrestling. Refers to the illusion that scripted, choreographed events are real. In geopolitics and modern statecraft, it's the performance of conflict, competition, or leadership as if it were organic and genuine, while the outcomes are already preordained, managed, and or manufactured. it's not fake in the sense that nothing happens, right? The wrestlers, they're phenomenal athletes. They do actually get hit with chairs, but it's fake in the sense that the public is manipulated into emotional investment in these staged narratives. The actors, the leaders, the states, the parties, generals, pundits, they all play roles for audience consumption, and events are scripted to maintain the system, not to resolve its crises. So kayfabe is theater with real casualties. When we're dealing with war, we're dealing with real deaths, real destruction, real chaos in a managed, choreographed performance.
Yeah, like I said, like Shakespeare says, the world's stage. And I mean, it's no different than, wars, and I mean, modern wars, these particular wars, because at the end of the day, what's at stake here? Bankers are financing these wars to profit from military industrial complexes. And this is military industrial complex, not necessarily America, but all military industrial complexes are benefiting through manufacturing and selling of weapons. I mean, there's assets, there's resources, territory, populations, control. I mean, all different factors involved, and there are people there are individuals, corporations, different financiers that have a stake because they are stakeholders in these particular conflicts, and that's more or less why it's fake. I mean, it's literally a manufactured war so that elites and certain people in key positions and key corporations and key banking, financing, whatnot, BlackRock being one of them, benefits. Halliburton benefited during the war on terror with Bush's war in the Middle East. BlackRock is benefiting from the Ukrainian conflict. But more or less, who's benefiting from this conflict? That's the main question right now I'd like to get into. What's your analysis, Adam?
There are many influences, many stakes. It's I mean, for example, you can talk about selling weapons, weapon manufacturers. It's true. That's an immediate party that stands to benefit from when weapons go flying and guns start shooting. However, we can also look at, for example, China's Belt and Road Initiative. And you can say on a great state level, America has interest against China. Well, China wants to dominate the Eurasian island from China to Spain using its Belt and Road Initiative. Well, where does that go through? Iran, Syria, to the Mediterranean, Turkey, etc. Well, Syria now is under globalist American empire control. You can't access the Syrian port of Latakia, I believe, where Syria off Iran, you can't really be building pipelines and critical infrastructure like that if you think there's going to be a war zone. It massively disrupts things. I would say if it's not Latakia and Beirut, the port was destroyed by their own incompetence years ago. I don't think it's been rebuilt yet. Where's the best port on the Levant? Tel Aviv. Excellent. Now, Tel Aviv, the city itself, took a beating in this little 12-day war, the Broken Spear. But the port, the infrastructure, is still mostly intact. I mean, they took a beating, a hammering, but still there. Iran did not lose, nor have they won. Israel did not win, nor did they lose. They didn't have the chance to lose because America stepped in. And America was always going to step in. The question was how. And this is the kayfabe. If Israel were going to absolutely win and dominate the conflict, like if they won after 3 days, America would have joined in. They would have absolutely beat Iran up together, because if they could, they would have. They couldn't. We all knew that Israel couldn't win this. Israel fought anyway. It was a gamble. The gamble didn't pay off, and America's there to say, look, we're either going to escalate this or let's manage the off-ramp and call it down. And that's what they ended up doing. But it's important to note that Iran wasn't defeated. They weren't victorious, but they weren't defeated. And Israel didn't win. They weren't yet defeated. They were on the verge. I think they could only last another 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks And then if America didn't get involved, they would have been defeated. So, okay, Israel has like a 3-5 week time frame of not being destroyed. Iran was nowhere near being destroyed. They took a hammering, assets were destroyed, people died. It wasn't pretty. I mean, call it 1,000 dead versus 100. You know, maybe the figures are off 10-20%, whatever. But the important thing here is this conflict isn't over because neither party feels defeated.
Yeah, but I mean, we refer to this Iranian Israeli conflict as an ongoing conflict, like Sparta and Athens, or like Carthage and Rome. It's just, I mean, how many times did Carthage and Rome fight, and then eventually Rome, won eventually, or Athens and Carthage. I mean, like if you read the Athenian, Thucydides, I read this book as an undergrad. I mean, it's like I think it was like a 600-700 page book, and I mean, one of the main things that came up in the analysis was they were fighting each other for generations, and it was generations of like hatred, and they were like, why do we hate these people? Why do we hate Sparta? Why do we hate Athens? You know what I mean? Like they don't even the current generation, and that like eventually we're like, why are we fighting? Because this isn't our war. This is a war of like generations back, and we have no clue why we're still fighting this conflict. You know what I mean? And I see the same thing with the Israeli-Iran war or ongoing conflict. I really don't think the youth, the Zoomer generation, even the some of the Y generation in both countries, actually really care to fight this conflict, to be honest. I mean, it would be good to do a case study and kind of get a survey to see what's the actual support for this conflict, because I could tell you in the United States, as we've seen on social media, and of course Israel and Iran suppress the social media presence because obviously they're at war with each other, and it is what it is. But in the United States, they don't support it. Like majority of the Z generation and a lot of the Y generation, millennials and Zoomers, they're asking, like, they're like, no, I'm not going to go to war. Like, why? It's not my conflict. I have real problems back in the United States. I can't afford rent, can't find jobs, can't find, I'm not making enough to even pay my bills. So you're telling me to go fight in a conflict overseas when we have real problems back in the United States. And we could probably segue into what's currently going on with the, I guess the mass deportation. But if you want to close with what we started with the main topic here.
The war was real, but the off-ramp was scripted. This is a pause, it's not a peace. Kind of think end of World War One, 1919, not 1945. Some people call the interwar period of the First and Second World War as a 20-year truce. Iran and Israel remain in a state of strategic opposition. There's a fundamental conflict there that hasn't been resolved by someone punching the other. No one's won, everyone's bled. I think that, I say that neither side won, but I think if you had to give it to one of them, I would say Iran came out better. So the fakeries in the narratives, not exactly the warfare. It's we zoom out, right? We talk about the empire, the regime versus the people. So the empire, it was in their interest to even try this war. Israel was kind of this kinetic imperial spear, a kinetic pawn thrown and broken at Iran. This is elite and imperial chess. But for the people, for the real pawns, the actual people who suffer, this isn't something this isn't a populist war. This isn't like, they've hurt me, they've done these things to me, I have problems with Iran or otherwise. Instead, it's interests. And the number one interest, who is the greatest absolute power interest in in the great games, the central bankers and billionaire oligarchs, particularly in London, New York, and Washington, these are the real the central bankers and other pillars of the cathedral.
These are the winners of this conflict.
These are the winners. These are the players. These are the not just kings of states, but the imperial, the ones actually running the world and things. And it's in their interest to have all of this, and it's not in the interest of the populist, of the every person. So. Yeah, I think there's a real war still coming. I think if you want to defeat Iran, I think it took 10, 20 years to defeat Saddam Hussein, right? Iran.
Well, these are two different empires or two different countries, completely.
Different
magnitude, population, military equipment, and yeah.
Iraq was a colonial production, right? Ottoman Empire rules that place for centuries. It dissolves. French and the British say, all right, we're going to manufacture this nation state of Iraq and Syria. And, this is what Saddam's big problem was, taking this land and making it into a nation. And there were problems and everything. And they went to war, actually, Iraq and Iran. 8 years that their war lasted. I hear it was brutal. Hundreds of thousands.
Was Iraq defeated in that war, right? I believe.
I know Iran didn't lose, but I don't think that I don't think anyone was victorious. Yeah. I'm not
and
sure.
Again, the United States funded that. That was a CIA funded war.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Saddam had all of that surplus U.S. military equipment, was because of that conflict that basically America destroyed when they invaded and when they fought them during the Kuwaiti conflict. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, all that good stuff.
The point is, if you want to wage a conventional conflict in Iran, it's going to be a prolonged, right? This is kind of the difference between this American. I talk about the kayfabe. America, how they initiate war is shock and awe, very dramatic. They go in, kill the internet, blow up the electricity, try and kill the leaders. They want it to be over and done with. The Russians, in contrast, it's not as dramatic. It's much more slower, grinding, attrition, grinding, steady, gradual. They're now it's been over 3 years now of them fighting. They're starting to make a lot of headway. Their military in Ukraine is 4 times larger than it was when it began with. Ukraine doesn't have that same skill, that same advantage. So I think Russia's winning. It's a real war. Even though I remember in the beginning, lots of people said, oh, it's a fake war. I'm not seeing lots of dramatic things blowing up, all this.
I mean, it's not so much a fake war. It's just, it's a banker's war just the same, but it's a different kind of banker's war. You know what I mean? It's funded. The bankers are funding the Ukrainian side. The Russians do have their oligarchs. They do have some funding. They do have some military industrial complex. They do benefit in a sense. But there's a lot of different factors, and we've talked about this many, many times on the Liberty Report and on the podcast and in the Telegram groups. Links are in the description. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Russia, you nailed it exactly true. And this goes back to Napoleonic Wars. This goes back to World War II, World War One. Russia is one of those countries where they just throw a bunch of people at you. They wear you down, and they just wait it out. They're very good. They're very patient combat, in combat or just conflicts in general. And they got a lot of people. I don't know about now. I talked about this before in the Telegram group that, they don't necessarily have the population density now. They do have the technology and the weapons and things like that. And they do have financing, but they just don't have the personnel. So it's a little more hybrid now than it was
at the start of the war. Russia had 145 million people, Ukraine 44 million. So let's just, regardless of the fact that many Ukrainians fled and many have died, let's just say Russia has 100 million. Sure, but there's 100 million more of them. There's just no,
correct. Yeah. So, a country roughly the size of Texas, maybe a little bigger. Fighting a country the size of the United States, Canada combined, maybe give or take, maybe even a little bit bigger than that. I mean, it's you're talking about Texas versus the United States versus Canada and the United States. I mean, it's it is what it is.
So they always had the supremacy of numbers and logistics and scale.
Correct. And like I said, you got the U.S. empire backing them and NATO. You know, I mean, the entire full force of NATO funding and whatnot. I don't know how that's coming upon now because of the Israeli conflict, obviously Israeli-Iran conflict. I said that this would expand with Mario. I think it was volume 4. If you go back in the podcast, it is in the YouTube channel and it's on the Rumble channel. It's on locals as well. Subscribers, like I said, Rumble 3 gets you $3 off your first month's membership. But more or less, I talked about this at the beginning of the Gaza conflict, that this was going to expand into a regional conflict, a bigger regional conflict with Iran and then China and Russia. And sure enough, year and a half or a year later, it is what it is. And this is the goal. This was the end game. The end game was Iran. And I had said that the Gaza was the beginning. That was the catalyst. And then, but that's Israel. Israel was concerned about Gaza. They wanted them gone because of the resources, the petroleum assets off the coast of Israel. They were trying to build pipelines, all this stuff. And that's where it began. And now we're in this ongoing conflict. But hey, the war hawks and the neocons got their conflict, and they saw what they basically got to see what would happen if they got involved in this conflict, and they just weren't expecting exactly the response that they got. And I'm sure they were quite shocked at the level of response and resilience the Iranian government and military actually were able to put together. They were probably pretty shocked about the response that Iran had on Israel, hitting targets within Tel Aviv, running, to the point where they were overwhelming their defense, their what they call it, the Iron Dome, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Overwhelming the Iron Dome.
There's Iron Dome, David Sling, and there's American THAAD, and then they also have their fighter jets shooting down some of them. And
yeah, I mean, it was, and like I said, Israel has F-35s. They have fifth generation fighters. They were actually penetrating into Iranian airspace and hitting targets with these planes. Iran didn't have any military planes. I mean, they're using surplus U.S. airplanes and French, probably Mirages and stuff. I don't know the full details of what their Air Force has, but I know that they weren't actually in. Their planes did not leave Iranian airspace, but Israel, sure enough, were sending F-35 stealth fighters into Iran and hitting targets within the country. Of course, the United States sent B-2s that we said was going to happen, and we were like, yeah, it's going to happen either Friday or Saturday night. It happened Saturday, and then there would be a response, a show of force, the fake narrative that we are. It's like, oh, we have to show that we did something, and that's the most America's going to do. And the reason why is because America's got domestic issues. They've got, finance issues. The federal government is having, I mean, they're past this big, beautiful bill because they've got to do tax cuts and they've got to try to stimulate the economy. So they can't get involved into a major war because Iran is another Afghanistan. It's another Iraq. And
it's
it's combining
magnitude.
Both of them together. It's combining both of them together. And
to
more so. Yeah,
to the power of Libya. Correct.
So there's no way. I mean, there was a professor that broke it down, geopolitical professor. He's an Asian American. He did a really good analysis. He broke everything down. I don't disagree with anything that he broke down. I can't remember his name per se, but his videos are passing around the internet. Other influencers are talking about him. I'm not really going to get too in detail of what he was talking about because we've already. Pretty much his analysis is what we've broken down already before that video was being passed around in the social media. But yeah, I mean, Iran's definitely got a powerful military, Republican Guard. They've got a lot of surplus equipment, and like I said, the surplus equipment. When I say surplus equipment, I'm not saying surplus equipment like you go to the Army surplus store and buy like World War II memorabilia. I'm talking about surplus equipment where they have a large amount of equipment from the United States that's still functional, that the United States is still using today in modern combat. So they have a lot of it. It's there. It's been there since the 80s, since the Americans brought it in, or 70s.
70s, yeah.
Yeah. On top of that, they got
they destroyed the F-14 Tomcats.
Yeah. And they've got I think they got French Mirages. They're not really that great from what I understand. I mean, I'm not a military guy. That's Terrence Popsfield, we when I bring him on. But yeah, they've even got their modern equipment. Obviously they have modern rocketry. Okay, okay. I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, they got modern rocketry and hypersonics. They've got drones. They've got They got GPS tracking, tracking jamming devices, air defense systems, modern air defense systems Russia brought in. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and on top of that, it's a very mountainous region. It's a very mountainous country. So, that became a very big and dire issue for the Afghanistan conflict with the United States because they couldn't bring tanks in. They had to use howitzers, and they're not as effective because all you can do with a howitzer is just like target, hit, and I mean, it's like track. Okay, well, if you hide in a cave, it's like the howitser's not going to do anything anyway. So basically, Afghanistan was a ground war. You had to send a lot of personnel, a lot of trucks. You had to do police work. That's not going to be Iran. Iran is going to be a very difficult conflict. It's impossible. They have a lot of land, like natural land terrain barriers and protections. It's a very large country. It's impossible to invade, especially with the United States. I think we have the United States right now has 200,000 active personnel, give or take, maybe 300,000 max. I think it's even lower than that. They don't have the military personnel to do it. In order to even get a chance to even,
I think they've got more than that. Like they've got 80,000 troops in Europe alone.
Okay.
You might say that they have that many infantry. I don't know, but Navy, I'm sure they have more.
Yeah. I mean, all personnel. Yeah. I think it's 500,000.
I think it's probably even more. But George Orwell, famous quote: "The war is not meant to be won; it is meant to be continuous. Hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not the victory over either Eurasia or East Asia, right? Russia or China, but to keep the very structure of society intact, meaning the oligarchy, the hierarchy, the neo-feudal, the money printing. In fact, if you listen to a world-renowned classical economist, Michael Hudson, he gives a phenomenal lecture about how the US dollar is a history of neo-colonialism, how the reason we're off the gold standard is entirely because all of the printing exclusively is for military spending. That's it. There's nuance, but you break it down to its most fundamental. That's what it's all about. And so if it's all about printing money for wars, who benefits when the money's printed? The central bankers. And what's that money spent on? It's not just in nothing. It's spent on the military industrial complex and a few things that the government does inefficiently, whatnot. So this is really who's winning. The war, to defeat Iran, it's not easy. It's maybe even impossible without the use of nuclear weapons. And we don't want to use nuclear weapons. It would be the most. It's not just you drop one nuke, two nukes.
Yeah.
But you drop like 30. You have to drop like 30 of them, which means it would be the single most evil and most disastrous act to have ever happened. Right, Genghis Khan burned down a city allegedly with 1 million people, dropping 30 nukes on Iran. Way worse.
Of course.
So no one wants to do that. America can't afford to do this. But then the narrative, the performance has to be there.
So I've got the data analysis of the troop personnel. What I was referring to as the overseas presence right now is 220,000. That's the number I was getting to.
Of which 80,000 are in Europe, and so I guess 140,000 across 70 countries.
Correct. And I think there's probably maybe roughly 60,000 within the Middle East corridor right now, with various bases. There's 15,000 between the two largest bases, Kuwait being Camp Doha and then Qatar base. That's 30. And then there's another maybe 45,000. Anyway, the approximate total number of personnel is 2.86 million. So close to that, 3 million. They've got what I was saying is 1.3 million active duty troops. So the total personnel includes civilians, National Guardsmen, and all the variations thereof. I obviously, like I said, 3 million is not going to do it. because you still got to defend homeland. You got overseas bases. You got other conflicts. You got things that you need to protect. I would say like what out of all those troops, like I said, 200,000. The most you can allocate to this conflict would be 150,000 max. That's not going to do it. Not 10 million. Not 10 million troops, active troops that the Iran has. I mean, and then on top of that, it's a mountainous place. There's nowhere to escape. I mean, you put them in, paratroop them in, they can't leave. They're stuck.
You can't fight a war without logistics. And the other thing is, wars are expensive. Prolonged wars again, Iraq is one thing, and America couldn't win. Vietnam is another, and Vietnam, is Vietnam. Iran is its own civilization. I mean, it's it's over 3,000 years old. Persia. It's not a thing you can just jump into and win within a fortnight.
Exactly. Yeah, invading Iran would like invading China or Russia. I think honestly, it's just impossible. There's no way you can do it. Even with NATO, like full NATO support, not gonna happen. And then if you're China and Russia gets involved, I forget about it. There's just no way. You would have to have a full, and that's what I mean. We knew that this wasn't going to go any further than a couple of bombs being dropped, and then to coordinate it with the fake, we're talking about the WWE style, scripted narrative.
All right,
they were never
WWE. They're screaming at each other, and then in the back rooms, there's backroom deals,
they're hanging
and
out,
they're having dinner, and they're friends in the background. WWE. Now, I don't know that Trump is best friends with Khomeini, or Putin or Xi, but they're certainly, they meet.
Oh, they're communicating.
Right? They communicate.
They definitely are communicating. Yeah, they have direct lines to each other, so they just pick up the phone and they can talk instantly with them. So they are in communication. That's the main thing. You want that. You do want that. You definitely want that, especially with when you're dealing with nuclear powered obviously countries that have nuclear capabilities. You want that direct line of communication. You want them to communicate, because this is what de-escalates any type of major escalation. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's like we've concluded, it's basically military bankers wars, military industrial complex, making money, big money, and defense contractors, things of that nature. To be honest, I think at the end of the day, my analysis, what I think is that there's a show of force, and they want obviously Iran wants to trade with the West. They want to sell their oil, not necessarily in dollars, but they want to get to the European market. And this is what I think. And like I said, you can disagree, it's fine. The Gaza conflict, like I said before, was because Gaza was trying to cut Iran and Russia out by building a pipeline from Saudi Arabia through Jordan and through Israel, through Turkey, and hooking into Egypt and Turkey's oil and corridors there. And I think this was part of the issue of what began this conflict, like I had said. And I'm not saying that Iran was involved in any type of I guess that was it October 7th or whatever it was concerned. Yeah, sure. I don't think Iran was directly involved with that.
Yeah, they weren't directly involved. My understanding, they didn't need to be. I mean, they support Hamas and whatnot, or Qatar through proxies, whatever. I don't disagree with you that Iran would like to access European markets. It's just European markets, whatever. Iran wants global markets. They're being sanctioned by America because they oppose the American world order, the unipolar world order. And that's really what, there is the central bankers, there is the resources. These are all true. There are also fundamental conflicts. And some of these fundamental conflicts are, for example, and this is really the thing. We don't want to get caught up in the news cycle. We don't want to jump from this to this. You want to look at the conflicts, identify the underlying macro trends, and zoom in on those, and then apply your principles and your critical thinking, rather than getting swept away in the information cascade of the controlled theater.
Yeah, the WWE. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So chaos.
So, like the resources in Gaza, it's important, but there's also a fundamental issue. You've got the Gazans, which are an existential security threat to the state of Israel. They're a problem that needs to be solved. How do you do that? Yeah. The European market, it's important, but the global market, you've got the US hegemony, and you've got Eurasian or third world or but we'll call it Eurasian multipolarity, and that really is going to be what I believe one of the main trends of the 21st century, the rise of Eurasian multipolarity as well as South America, but Eurasian multipolarity, which is led by China and Russia, and Iran is kind of a junior partner almost. And this is really, Iran has the choice. They've got three choices now. North Korean route, get a nuke. Alliance, a formal alliance with Russia and China, who apparently have both offered. This would go against the current Iranian constitution, and they would be the junior partner of a Russia-China axis. The third is negotiate with the Americans. I don't know the right thing to do. I hope they don't go for the nuclear route.
I think what was already pre-planned is that they were just gonna, it was all coordinated. They Israel attacked first. Iran was, like we had said before, kind of provoking a little bit, and I think at the end of the day, Iran wants to play ball with the West on their terms, not necessarily on American terms, but on their terms. And I think Iran actually came out better on this situation, because now Trump is like wanting to play ball and open up trade that he had said. And I knew this was going to eventually happen. I said this was going to happen in the Telegram group, that basically, oh, you're muted, by the way, Adam. Sorry. But yeah, I was basically just saying that, yeah, I saw a trade deal coming. That's what all this was about is. And I don't know about Israel per se. I know they have economic issues right now. They have a huge amount of people leaving because of the Gaza conflict. They're having
because of the conflicts.
Yeah.
There's deals to be made. There's interest. There's competing factions. This is the important thing: is when you look at the elite, the cathedral, the regime. It's not. There are many factions within it. It's not a singularity. There is a global elite class. They do act as a class. They always pull together, but there are many factions within it. Techno-globalists, neocons, Zionist globalists. You've got an inner party and outer party.
There's a lot of factors. Definitely. Yeah.
How they act as a class is that they seek to maintain the hierarchy and its structure. And that really is the friend-enemy distinction. And again, don't look at this event or that event and these people. People are sometimes important, but we're less bothered about the people and more concerned about the structure. And that's what's important to pay attention to.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the Arabia with the GCC countries right now, and because of the negative oil prices, they're primarily, that's where their income comes from. They're basically a gas. What is it? They're a gas station posing as an empire. Is that the best way I could describe them?
Gas station masquerading as a country was how the Americans wanted to portray Russia, which is hilarious because Russia.
That's what the GCC is.
1,200 year history of continuous country.
That's basically GCC. It's exactly that. What they said about it's like doublespeak. It's what they said about Russia is exactly what the GCC is to the T. And you could see their economy in shambles right now. Recently, I guess the offers in Saudi, it went from, they're going through Saudization, where they basically are replacing foreign workers with Saudis because they can't afford to hire foreigners anymore. Foreigners won't go there because they've cut salaries in half, and now they've cut them by a third of what they were paying before COVID because of the negative oil prices and the economy there. The Neem project in the south has pretty much failed. They don't have metro stations. I mean, you understand, this is supposedly a first world industrialized country, and they don't have metro stations in their major metropolitan areas. Even the United States has metro stations. They may not be in very good condition.
Who
they
says
have metro
that
stations.
Saudi is a first world country?
No, I'm not saying first world. I'm saying they are industrialized. They obviously
Yeah,
have an industrial
some
capacity. They
of
do.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But they don't have any modernization. I mean, it's in shambles economically. Even Gonzalo Lira, had said that there might be a color revolution there that he predicted before his unfortunate departure. He was saying that there could be a color revolution. I don't know. I mean, you understand it could be possible if the economy and the GCC gets that bad, because of like I'm predicting $30 a barrel oil prices by the end of summer, by the fall. Um, that's what I've been saying for 6 months now. I'm sticking to that. I think oil prices are going to go to $30 a barrel by the end of summer. I really do think, because there's just so much oil out there, and right now the oil companies are trying to find alternative ways of getting oil to Europe and America in a very efficient and very cheap manner, to bypass the Middle East and obviously there's so much conflicts. It's like, why are we basically you're going to go around Africa because you can't go through Suez Canal, and now the Persian Gulf is having issues, and the Red Sea, and it's like, no, we got to find alternatives. So they're looking at Argentina now, Venezuela. Venezuela is playing ball now. They got a lot of oil. Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia, by the way. And you still have Southeast Asia. You have Indonesia. You have and that's good for China or whatever. You have the United States has a lot of oil. They have a
I
lot
will
of oil.
say I'm not an expert on oil, but one of the things about Saudi oil is it's allegedly not just so abundant but also very accessible, which means the cost of extraction is apparently really low, which lends
It's
to
accessible
increased
because
competitiveness.
it's a desert climate, and they have a lot of warm water ports, and they're in a geographically ideal location because they're next to Europe and the Mediterranean with the Suez Canal, and China and the shipping lanes, because the shipping lanes they go through the Indian Ocean, through the Red Sea, into the Suez Canal, into Europe. So Saudi is like, most of the oil is either going, I think it's 50% is going to China, and
No,
25 to 30.
didn't you say
No,
50? I think you said 20% of that goes to China, and China imports 50% of its energy oil from Iran. Is what I believe you
it's
said
something
in
like that.
the
Yeah. It's something
Gonzalo
like
Lira
I
Legacy
have.
Group.
That's right. But anyway, the reality is that
A lot
um
of oil trade goes through the Persian Gulf.
right. So China, you have, all right. So the thing is, the Southeast Asia is where all the sweet crude is. It's some of the best oil in the world is in Indonesia, the Southeast Asia. This is the reason why China is so interested in Southeast Asia. This is why the United States has a permanent fleet there to protect those assets, because Japan during World War II was trying to take control of those oil wells, and that's what was part of that World War II conflict. Same thing with China right now. They're trying to edge their way into it and influence it by going in there through soft power, obviously giving loans, grants, things of that nature, building the infrastructure, putting military bases, things of that nature. But going back to like the Americas, there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources in the Americas. It's a matter of how are we going to develop these ports? And China's in Americas right now. They're building ports. They're soft power. And it's like, well, are they there to start taking and extracting resources? Yes, they are. So this is a concern for Europe, not so much for America, but for Europe, because where are those resources going from Brazil? The sugar and oranges and all of that, it's all going to Europe. It's going to Americas. And if China takes control, China's everywhere. I put a map on here. The same podcast. I think it was volume 4, guys. By the way, if you go back, I talked about China was everywhere, and China was gaining a lot of power and influence, control in South America, as well as in Southeast Asia and these areas, the Middle East, especially in the Indian Ocean. So this is the biggest concern. Like I said, the end game is not Iran, I believe. I think the end game is China, and trying to strip China of any influence or power that they are continually controlling. And I think Trump is more concerned with China, to be honest, than he is with Iran or with Russia at this point. And you'd started this with the Belt and Road Initiative, like you were talking about, with the Eurasia and all that stuff.
Well, this is the latest official doctrinal positioning of the CENTCOM and USA. It is to say China is the real threat. Now, personally, I would like. I personally don't. I prefer the Jeffrey Sachs belief of trade enriches over the Mearsheimer tragedy of great power politics. I would rather that China, it's a rival, sure, and there's going to be conflicting interests. This is just the nature of power, but you can both improve and get better and develop, and world peace breaks out. Super. The alternative is you say we're going to have to fight over these things. Not great. That they have, but they need to manufacture these conflicts, and it's very sad. It's tragic because, as we say, Americans and American people and Europeans and European people, people have not been this poor for centuries. Well, we're what are you talking about? We have air conditioning, we have mobile phones, we have all sorts of food.
Cash poor.
Absolutely. So yeah, there are riches, and this is able to sustain morale and populations. And don't get me wrong, I've a chronic disease. I would be very miserable 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. I don't know. Very miserable. So I'm happy not to be living in the past. At the same time, I talked about this last week and talk about it again. Great Depression, people said it's so terrible. I've lost my house. I've lost my car. I've lost my job. People today, I never had any of that, and I'm in tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
Correct.
So
yeah, I mean, for the most part, there are a lot of people that actually have a lot of assets. They just can't sell them because people are cash poor. So even during the Depression, at least the problem between now and then is that at least in the Depression, people could sell furniture, art, collectibles, gold, silver, different things in order to at least try to alleviate the burden. They were going to bartering and stuff like that. But now, in today's current economic climate, people have a lot of assets, furniture and stuff. They can't sell it. Nobody wants to buy it. People already have too much stuff. They're just cash poor. And the other thing is bartering's not working because people are like, I need cash. It's like, I can't trade for stuff. It's like, I need cash because I have to pay bills and credit and taxes and things of that nature. And it's literally the bankers have total control. That's the reality. Bartering's not going to work. They worked during the Depression. Bartering was the method of trade, in that regard. But, we don't have it now.
If you have a sustenance farm and you grow hazelnuts and your neighbor grows peaches, you can barter that. Hey neighbor, I've got extra nuts. Here you go, and I've got some my cucumbers I've harvested them this week. I got some extra. Here you go. That works if you're in sustenance farms, but if you're in urbe, if you're in the cities, you don't have that.
SOL.
SOL?
Shit out of luck. It's
Yes.
an American idiom. Yeah.
I know the idiom. It's just not typically abbreviated where I'm from.
The acronym.
Yeah. So yeah, it's energy and resources are one of those fundamental trends, and throughout history, as you said, going back to Carthage and Rome. It's one of those macros that's important. The theater, the fakery is not in the oil, but about, we hate Venezuela. They're a corrupt dictatorship. They're authoritarian. We're not getting on with Russia and problems with Iran. Venezuela, you're looking pretty nice this time of year. America, we hate drugs, and then America is like the number one drug trafficker. The American government, the number one trafficker of drugs in the world. Make a fortune of it. That's how the CIA, however much the CIA
how they get the weapons out of the
budgeted,
country. Drugs for weapons. Yeah.
However much the CIA have budget, they make a load of money selling drugs and other things like this. I don't know what's in the big beautiful bill. I don't think anyone does. but
It's a tax
certainly
bill, basically, more or less. That's why I had to go back to the House, because the Senate made some. I believe the Senate made some amendments to it, and because the House is the closest body to the populace, they have to review those amendments and make sure that they jive, so to speak, with criteria. And then if they agree, then it'll go to Trump, and then he can veto it or sign it.
pretty
If he, yeah.
pretty interesting that in the Senate it was 50-50 and JD Vance was the tiebreaker. I don't
That's how
know,
it
was
is.
that
That's constitutional.
why is it why was it 50-50? Why was it not 51-49?
It's not very well supported by both sides of the aisle. You have the way it works in DC, and like I said, watch The Distinguished Gentleman. There's another good show with Spacey or whatever that was on Netflix. It got canceled because of his little issues that he was dealing. He's a weird guy, but nonetheless, there's something called a whip. And this is well known in politics in America. And the whip is what goes, and they get these people and they make deals and side deals. And this is all legal. Like, it just, hey, I need you to support me on this and this and this. So that was basically key people within Senate that were like, that were sitting there by the GOP and by Trump's people. Like, hey, I need you to whip this in and get these people to vote. Otherwise, it would have failed. Yeah, basically. That's how it works.
Is the big beautiful bill going to pass?
I think so. There's enough support.
What does it mean for ordinary people?
It'll be a tax break, some tax incentives. It's going to affect welfare, certain entitlement programs, I believe. It's a 1,000-page bill, and I don't have time to actually read through the whole thing, but this was kind of like the highlights. If you want, I can bring it up real quick. If you want.
There's about 3 people that have read through the bill. We're not one of them. No one in Congress is one of them. No one in the Senate. No one in the House.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. The highlights.
There's one guy. He's retired. He just enjoys. Another guy is just a hobbyist, and one guy, it's his job to actually read through for formatting and editing purposes. He doesn't understand half the words, but at least he made sure it looks good.
These are big bloated bills that are just they're tax bills, and like usually the tax bills, they have a lot of pork barrel in it, where they just throw stuff in that doesn't really make sense. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and Senate Finance one big beautiful bill. So they're talking about the good. So like I said, it's most of the good tax policies align with tax foundation principles of stability.
Do you know much about the Heritage Foundation?
Yeah, the Heritage Foundation is a very large. Let me go ahead and take this off. It's a think tank. It's a very well funded and established think tank that is in America that works with Congress and stuff. They do a lot of nonprofit as well as studies and academic stuff.
They gained. They've been around for 52 years now. Since 1973.
I believe they're very conservative. They're leaning conservative.
Whatever. What does that mean? They were in the news quite a lot when Trump was being elected for their Project 2025, which was like the think tank. This is how Trump Republican Party ought to kind of be choreographed. My question was, I didn't read everything in Project 2025. I didn't think it was as bad as people were screaming about. My question is do you know if the big beautiful bill is aligned with Heritage Foundation and Project 2025? I don't.
I am not sure.
Because when we're talking about the structure and the hierarchy and the empire, it's these think tanks that run things. It's the public policy pieces they put out that does serve to coordinate imperial doctrine, right? It's again, there's not absolute unity in the ruling class and the elite, the cathedral, but there is direction, and they work in their interests. And what's more important than people, unless there's select people, what's more important and most important is institutional support. That what is power? Institutional support. So I'm actually thinking of starting to look at mapping the cathedral, starting to kind of work it through. But it's a lot of institutional support, and that's really what you're looking for. So it's money, interests, institutions, and common interests and macro patterns.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the Heritage Foundation is definitely supporting the bill, the Big Beautiful Bill. They're one of the main, like you brought it up actually, the Heritage Foundation. They're one of the main think tanks, and they actually are a very conservative think tank in Washington, and I believe they are supporting it. Some of the highlights of the Big Beautiful Bill: tax and family breaks. So it gives a permanent Trump era tax rate of 10 to 37% with inflation adjustments, a bigger standard deduction for single and head of household and married. So it adds the 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000. Like I said, it's a tax bill. And child tax credit boosted from 2,500. Reverting to 2,000 thereafter. So it boosts the child tax credit, gives a little bit more money back to the working people. So above the line deductions for overtime tips for those under income thresholds. So it gives you a little bit more money back. It's the tax bill is actually, like I said, I was saying Trump was going to be the UBI president, and this is a UBI bill. Basically, it's tax breaks for the working class. That's one side of it. That's probably a pro. It really, because looking at this, it's definitely it's a very, very, very nice tax break for working class people. So like Trump accounts tax exempt savings trust with 1,000 initial deposit per child and 5,000 annual contribution cap. So that's not bad.
The Big Beautiful Bill is estimated to increase the federal deficit by $4 trillion over the next decade. But proponents argue this would be set something by 1.5 trillion. I don't know in what, but 1.5, that's still considerable. And it's a lot of spending as well. But the Heritage Foundation has expressed strong support for the One Big Beautiful Bill, emphasizing its alignment with conservative fiscal policies of increasing the deficit by $4 trillion.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a tax bill, but it's also a spending bill, mixed in one, basically. So it's a UBI bill. It's the same as like the stimulus bill that Trump passed. Like I said, he's going to be UBI president. This is a UBI bill, basically. So one of the things that it does repeal is the clean energy tax credit. That's the one thing that I think was. That's why Elon Musk didn't like it. That's the main reason why he didn't like it, because it basically takes money out of his pocket. Because we know that Elon Musk, where does he receive 98% of his funding from?
He's the welfare queen.
Yeah, he's a welfare queen. Exactly. He receives roughly 90% of his income comes from the taxpayer. His companies, they receive most of his money comes from taxpayers.
Most of his work is military-industrial complex, right?
A lot of it is, but I mean, the vast majority of his money comes from. He gets free money, free grants. He gets UBI from the federal government. He's a UBI CEO. Like all of his money, like all the money that he has, the billions of dollars that he has, that's U.S. tax dollar money. Just
African American.
African American, exactly, 100%. So yeah, that like I said, it repeals the clean energy tax credit, which is good, because that's part of the Green New Deal that we don't really care about. You know, if you're a conservative and even libertarian, I think it's retarded. Like it's like why are you giving incentives for organizations like Elon Musk, SpaceX, and or not necessarily SpaceX, but his Tesla cars that are garbage and nobody really wants to buy them, you know, other than trendy lefty woke people. So, I mean, it's kind of ironic.
And even now they're saying Trump, Elon's a Nazi. I hear their global sales are down 12 or 20%. Tesla,
Oh yeah, they're garbage
whatever.
vehicles.
Yeah.
I'd
Why would
rather
you
buy a
buy one?
Chinese made BYD. They're a lot better built and they're
Sure.
more reliable. I mean, I hate to say that, as an American, but like they're better vehicles, honestly. So family and nonprofit policies, they get a childbirth adoption support. Hey, that's good. $1,000. That's like a put-in type policy, to try. Obviously we're having population decline that we covered that in the previous podcast as well. So that's going to encourage people. Like I said, the earned income credit from child tax credit, childbirth adoption support, increase. These things are going to encourage people to have children. Um, and Head of household, married. These things are definitely supporting. They're incentivizing people to get married and have children, basically. So it looks good so far. I don't see anything wrong with it. I didn't break it down until now. I'm actually breaking it down for you guys live here. So health savings accounts expanded, allowing 20 million more Americans, especially seniors and rural families, to use HSAs. So the health savings accounts is what Obama and Biden did not like, because this basically is it's conservatives generally like the health savings accounts, because they usually there's a financial incentive to using them. It's kind of like, I'm not going to break it down too much in here, but let's just say that it's a very conservative type of we can break this down on another podcast, or I do a special podcast about it, being that I worked in healthcare, or insurance industry. Rural emergency hospital help. So he's going, like I said, UBI. So he's going to be giving money to hospitals and basically predominantly Trump mania, Trump red states, red areas, these rural areas, farm areas, places that are struggling with the health issues. So here's the thing that the UBI people don't like, not necessarily UBI, but the basically the people that don't want to work. I'm just kidding. Medicaid SNAP cuts. So work requirements, state costs, share rules, administrative red tape are introduced, with 7 to 12 million at risk losing coverage. So basically, he's just saying you need to be more accountable. I don't think this is going to affect the average person receiving these benefits. Obviously, food stamps and some type of Medicaid support. Obviously, if you're widowed, or you're elderly and you don't have the threshold to afford food and certain things, like, you're still going to probably be able to get those benefits and not have to do a work requirement. But mostly what this is for is the welfare queens, as we talked about, people that basically will get 6, 7, 8, 9, 20 children and don't want to actually go work. So usually this deals with and like I said, I would have to go further into this to see exactly what the wording is. But this is the only one that's actually an issue for some, because like I said already, people are struggling with food cost and the cost of living. But again, the bill is supporting people to go get work and to work, for tax benefits and things like that, with the tax cuts.
Struggling to afford cost of living? Are you saying
Yes.
we should bomb Iran?
Oh yeah, that's why nobody supported it, because they're like, dude, why are we paying whatever the cost it was to defend the Iron Dome, whatever, each rocket was like
It was
$200,000.
200 million a day just for the Iron Dome, and just for the air defense, my understanding, let alone jet fuel and infrastructure damage.
Yeah, that's all taxpayer. That's all U.S. taxpayer money, by the way. That's U.S. taxpayer funded. Most of that. Probably not all of it, but
that's like $1 a day every U.S. taxpayer.
Pretty much. So the other thing is the border defense and national debt. So border enforcement funding to $7 billion, capacity to port 1 million annually, legals. Defense increase of 150 billion, including drones and military tech. I mean, they already spend a lot of money anyway, but this will create jobs in the defense sector. Deficit impact adds. This is the one issue, is it adds $3 to $5 trillion over a decade, with estimate of 4.5 trillion tax cuts and 3.3 trillion debt increase. this is inevitable because this is a tax bill, and mostly the tax bill is it's a UBI tax bill, so it's giving tax breaks and benefits to working class people. So it costs money, guys. That's the reality. I'm not going to get too further into this. This is the one that the Dems are like, oh, well, the orange man bad because he's going to increase the debt ceiling. It's like, dude, I mean, the reality is the dollar, it's already hyperinflated anyway. So I mean, and the thing is like all of these different countries, they basically like keep
So they
the
have to
dollar.
get spending under control and cut back on a lot. But yeah. All right. Let's wrap it up. What are the conclusions? What have we learned?
Yeah, everything else looks that's pretty much the base of the big beautiful bill. But yeah, I mean, basically, it's I don't know. I think we learned that like basically Israel tried to get into a fight that they didn't have. They didn't realize that America doesn't have the financial nor the personnel to back any type of major conflict.
I actually think they did know, but they were desperate. I think they thought now is the best time as any to launch a gamble, and if it succeeds, amazing, and if it doesn't succeed, then we can cool it down as we did through choreography. That's my belief. Is America getting stronger relative to Eurasia and Iran? No. Did Israel succeed in the dominoes of Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Houthi, Yemen, Iraq, towards Iran? Yes. So I think they said this isn't the conditions aren't ideal, but they're the best we're going to get. Let's just gamble. It's not our lives, it's your lives, it's your money. Let's just do it. Maybe it works. We win within a week. We're heroes. Or 12-day war.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Israel's also having issues as well, financially, and they again
because they've been in a prolonged war.
Oh yeah, with Gaza, it's costing millions, like lives. It's costing lives, millions of dollars,
billions of dollars. Yeah,
I mean, who knows what the number is now? How much it's cost? I mean, it's been over a year now since we did that podcast.
Well, I heard one person report that Israel has lost $500 billion. I think they initially reported this was about with Iran, but it doesn't make sense. So I think maybe in total since October 7th, perhaps the conflicts have cost Israel $500 billion. Is makes sense to me, but I haven't verified that report. I couldn't find it, but that's one figure that I've heard thrown out there.
Yeah, like I said, it's just I don't know. The reality is that Trump is the UBI president, as we've seen with this big beautiful bill. It is a UBI bill. I'm gonna call it what it is, but it should be followed up with jobs program and infrastructure bill. He should go full throttle on it. An infrastructure bill definitely will put people to work, and then a jobs bill followed by infrastructure bill will put people to work and give people the necessary skills and trades, and then we don't have to rely on illegal immigration to come in and do these jobs. You can have people trained and skilled in apprenticeships. A lot of Zoomers want to work, and they're like, dude, if you pay them well, I don't know, you could probably survey, like I said, this comes down to surveys. You could do a survey, and you could survey a bunch of people, a bunch of Zoomers, and say, hey, would you want to learn apprenticeship, a paid apprenticeship, and become, like road worker, construction, engineering, to work your way into like an administrative role eventually in your lifetime and go in this career if it pays well? I'm sure undoubtedly most of them would say, yeah, sure, why not? Like, why not? If it's gonna pay me well, living wage, I can play my video games and chill out and be able to afford an apartment and buy a house eventually. Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean, I'd be the same way if I was that young and like I didn't have any opportunities, and they were like, hey, we're gonna give you a living wage, give you a job, a career, and you can take it from there. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Oh, you're still muted, brother, by the way.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Professor. It's been a very insightful episode.
Yeah.
Looking forward to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking forward to the next one. Maybe we talk about Ramadani. Maybe something crazy occurs in the next week. Who knows?
Something probably. That's why we do this once a week, because the stuff, we stay current with the current news trends, and and like I said, it's always with the clown show and the clown world and the world's a stage. Things are changing very, very rapidly and quickly. As I said, they would in 2025. Hashtag collapse 2025. By the way, just hit that on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Telegram. That's the hash. That's my hashtag. That's our hashtag. Hashtag collapse 2025, and just share the heck out of this content with friends and and whatnot, and like and subscribe, definitely. Visit Mad Max on Liberty group on Telegram, links in the description, and of course I'm on Telegram as well. It gets all their legacy group and Professor Red Pill. Join locals. Rumble 3 gets $3 off first month's membership. I do a lot of deep dives on there. I obviously, every members get access to my leadership book that I'm writing, and I'm going to be doing a lot of seminars and different types of research on there as well. As I am an associate professor. So that being said, thanks guys for joining us. Good night, and we'll see you next week. Peace.